What an absolute freaking gong show, man. Active members of the Canadian Armed Forces are actually being charged with terrorism plots. You also have new tariffs that Donald Trump just moments ago put onto Canada because of Mark Carney. You've got insolvencies and bankruptcies happening left, right, and center. And it just feels like Canada is imploding at all levels. So much so that even the ombudsman group, which is supposed to be this like neutral part of the government, sort of, even admits that there are bad actors operating within our government. So, yeah, if there's ever been a lack of hope to have in Canada, now's kind of the time. Not that I want you to be demoralized, but man, things are getting bad out there. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video, everybody. Before we get into it, I really do want to encourage everyone to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet already. It does really help with the growth. And I don't just say that to be annoying, because 60 or 70% of you are reoccurring viewers and you're actually just not subscribed. Maybe you're not logged in or whatever the case may be, but it'd be just simple for both of us if you logged in, subscribed, and then I would shut up. Or as my wife would tell you, I never actually shut up. And before we get into this video, I do actually have a message from today's sponsor. So here's the deal. I got 2 kids, I got a wife, I got a dog. My time is so limited, as is likely yours. And something that I'm always trying to do is to be the best version of myself. And a lot of that is reading books, how to navigate this, how to better finances, how to manage finances, how to talk to my kids, how to work on my emotional intelligence, which is actually a book that I'm reading. Short form is probably the best way to do book summaries on steroids. And that also happens to be today's sponsor. If you click the link down below in the description or the pinned comment below, you'll get to enjoy 20% off annual subscriptions. I absolutely love this. It's not just summary of books. They also add value on top of that. And they have a web browser attachment. So it doesn't just summarize books on steroids, but it also can summarize YouTube videos and basically just any web page. It is an incredible tool in my toolbox. Like I said, I highly recommend you guys check this out because it will save you so much time. It's such an incredible tool to have. The link again is down below in the description and the pinned comment below. Thank you, Short Form, for sponsoring today's video. All right, so this video is jam-packed with a lot of freaking goodies. Starting off with a bit of a refresher on what's actually going on with our energy sector here in Canada. The Ontario Premier just signed an agreement with Alberta to build the Ring of Fire Railway, which is kind of a good and big deal in Canada. I mean, I hate to say it, but it actually is pretty freaking awesome. This is something that Pierre Poilievre wanted to do and the Conservatives did, and it just so happens that it's getting done anyways. So Premier Doug Ford and Danielle Smith sign non-legally binding memorandums of understanding. Hopefully, everyone follows through with it. We're going to have to wait and see. Ontario has signed an agreement with Alberta to build infrastructure and energy corridors that include a possible railway to mineral-rich Ring of Fire region, the premiers of both provinces announced on Monday. The Ontario Premier Ford and Alberta Premier Smith signed 2 non-legally binding memorandums of understanding about increasing trade and building an energy corridor, including commitments to build oil and natural gas pipelines to northern and southern Ontario, which would be freaking awesome. If it happened, like that would be pretty clutch. Ford has been trying for years to build a critical mineral supply chain that would connect the mines in northern Ontario to processing facilities further south. It was first part of his vision to create an electric vehicle battery supply chain after significant investments in several plants in recent years. So, I mean, look, yes, it sucks that it's the Conservatives didn't win. And yes, of course, we're going to keep the Liberals under the very, very big microscope and analyze everything they're doing. But the provinces working independently outside of the federal government's jurisdiction, I think is really good, because you're going to start to see things like this that are hopefully going to happen, but even better in the future. And I just want to pass the question off to you. How do you feel about this? Are you happy this is happening? Because I do remember when Pierre Poilievre at his rallies during the election period would talk about the Ring of Fire, the crowd would go nuts. And it was also very well received online. So are you happy that this is happening, or are you not happy that this is happening? Let me know down below. below. Next up, we've got the fact that Alberta is, going to hold a public consultations on nuclear freaking power. I love this. This is one of the most giddy things for me right now is nuclear power in Canada.
Now, the Premier says the province will hold public consultations on nuclear power and whether it should be added to Alberta's energy mix. The province is currently reliant on natural gas for electricity, but the Premier says nuclear power could be good for oil sands projects. She referenced a power grid in the Peace River area that would produce about 40,000 megawatts. The province wants to hold consultations because nuclear energy is new for Alberta.
Ontario gets 60% of their power, I understand, on their grid from nuclear energy. New Brunswick has nuclear power. And so we'd be looking at yes, both small modular nuclear when they become available, but the CANDU reactors as well as one that's under active discussion in the Peace region.
The Premier says she has supported nuclear power for some time now, and consultations are expected in the fall. The Affordabilities and Utilities Minister is also working on a regulatory framework for nuclear energy.
I freaking love this stuff. I absolutely love this stuff. I've been following nuclear energy companies, and I love that idea of clean energy, nuclear. It's long lasting, even when it comes to our military equipment. I think that Canada should be investing money into nuclear powered submarines. They can literally stay underwater longer without coming up for air than the lifespan of everybody on board, which is kind of weird, but also very freaking cool. They could just literally live underwater. Not that they should, but they freaking could. And from a military defense perspective, that's pretty freaking cool, especially if you start incorporating other technologies. But that's just a military component of it. There's also the fact that it's just so much more efficient. So I want to pass a question off to you. How do you feel about that? Are you pro-nuclear? Are you against it? Let me know down below. And then we're talking about, insolvencies in Canada in May were down 2.6% compared to May of last year. The number of insolvencies in Canada in May fell 2.6% compared to the same month 12 months prior. According to data from the Office of the Superintendent of Bankruptcy, there were 12,395 insolvencies in May, down from 12,725 last year in May. However, the total is actually up 2.3% from the 12,114 insolvencies that took place in April. Consumer insolvencies in May totaled 12,004, including the 2,631 bankruptcies and 9,373 proposals compared with, and the numbers just keep going on and on. And this is just incredibly sad to see this continuously happening in Canada. I wish that we were living under times where we had proper leadership, where people could actually afford life and didn't have to resort to that. And I just want to pass a question off to you. Are you feeling the squeeze, the financial squeeze that most people are feeling right now when it comes to paying mortgage or rent or car loans, or even just simply going to the grocery store? Like, very basic necessities cost an exorbitant amount right now. And I'm feeling it. Everyone I know is feeling it, but I'd love to know if you guys down in the comments are feeling it. Next up, we're taking a look at bad actors in Canada. Go figure. So the Wiretap media on X at Breaking, Canada's procurement ombudsman claims that there are bad actors operating without accountability inside of the federal government's procurement system, and they don't have the proper tools to handle it.
The Auditor General recently found the government wasn't following procurement rules around securing contracts, for example. Should there be bigger repercussions or penalties put in place when the government doesn't follow its own procurement rules?
So we are a recourse mechanism that looks at what recourses exist. So there's ourselves, the Canadian International Trade Tribunal, and the court system that ultimately determine what the repercussions are to the federal departments. If it takes on a criminal nature, then it would be referred to the RCMP. So that's the framework of rules that exist. But again, I think your question speaks to accountability. What types of accountability exist within the federal government to ensure the rules are followed? And I think think it is important for people to stand up and say, I've made a mistake. If that mistake is not of a criminal nature, then ultimately the framework that exists, I do believe, is sufficient. But one of the struggles we're having is that people are not holding themselves accountable. Again, I work a lot with people on the buy side. They are trying hard to implement the rules. So I think it's a little bit unfair to them to just say they're simply not following the rules. There may be, discrete bad apples, but I would say that there is a significant effort to follow the rules. And that's why the third foundational change is we have to change the framework of rules, because there are so many. And the complexity of that web is not such that every person within the procurement system understands how they interact. So to simply say the rules were not followed and should have been is a little bit unfair to the procurement community, because they are trying. And again, I'm not discounting the fact that we have some bad actors. Absolutely we do. And part of our oversight responsibility is to root out those bad actors.
It's so weird to me that the government is aware that there's bad actors at all levels and nothing ever happens. I mean, we've seen the same song and dance for the past 10 plus years under Trudeau Liberals, with the We Charity scandal, with the Arrive scam scandal, with all of these money embezzlement issues, with abusing power, with the fact that the Emergencies Act was illegally invoked, like all of these things, and nothing. No jail time, no one gets fired, no monetary, penalization to anybody. Like it's insane to me that the biggest criminals, sure, are let out of bail and into the streets of Canada. But there's also a next level of crime, which is, I don't want to say superior than, stealing somebody's car, because I'm not the one to judge what is more superior in terms of crime, the hierarchy. But politicians, liberal politicians in our government, even NDP, for crying out loud, are just like a different level of crime, because they do it in plain sight. We see it happen, and nothing ever happens in terms of repercussions. It's so bizarre. But I think we're all kind of, unfortunately, getting a little desensitized to the matter, and it's becoming the new normal. At least that's how I feel. I feel a little demoralized about it, but I'd love to know what you guys think down below in the comments. Next up, we're taking a look at the breaking news. Table Salt on X posts major news. Trump announces 50% tariffs on copper. Is that the hardest hit yet? Canada gets 50% of exports and Chile 50% of exports. This is insane. Let's take a look.
Absolutely, Kelly. A lot of talk about trade in this meeting, which has gone for over an hour now, meeting with his cabinet in there. The biggest news we've gotten so far on the trade front is the president appearing to announce a few minutes ago that he will be imposing a new 50% tariff on all imports of copper. Take a listen.
Oh, my goodness.
And so we're going to be announcing pharmaceuticals, chips, and various couple of other things, big ones. We did steel, as you know, they're 50%. We did aluminum, 50%. Lumber just came out. Why don't you announce copper? And we did cars. And now today we're doing copper.
Copper, what would that tariff be on? The sectional tariff?
I believe the tariff on copper, we're going to make it 50%. 50%.
Absolutely, Kelly.
Oh my freaking goodness. It just doesn't end. Elbows up, eh? How are we sticking it to Trump now? How on earth is this even remotely considered, if at all, Mark Carney standing up to the big bad orange man that Trump is? I'm going to save you some time. It's not. In fact, we're getting steamrolled over and over. Like, it's worse. It's getting worse now that Carney is the prime minister. Like, it's actually getting worse. At least with Justin Trudeau, it was Governor Trudeau and just the announcement of tariffs. But they all came into effect, I believe, when Mark Carney was the interim prime minister. And then once he somehow legitimately won the election. And it's getting significantly worse with every passing day, week, and month. But hey, elbows up, right? Freaking cried out loud. If you ain't laughing, you're going to be crying. In other news, we're going to take a look here at what's going on with the Canadian Armed Forces and how active duty members are actually being charged from terrorism plot. Let's take a look. This is right from the RCMP as well. This is pretty huge.
We have more now on this hour's breaking news story. The RCMP say active members of the Canadian Armed Forces are facing terrorism-related charges in an alleged plot to create an anti-government militia and seize land by force in the Quebec City area. Now, this is a live look at Quebec City, where the men are set to appear in court today. This story is just breaking in the last hour, but the news release from the RCMP has details about weapons, ammunition, and explosives, all seized more than a year and a half ago in the Quebec City area. The Globe and Mail quotes an RCMP spokesperson as saying the arrests were made this morning. Now, Marianne Domain joins us now with a little bit more on what we know about this breaking news story. Marianne, obviously the fact that these were active members of the Canadian Armed Forces, a big part of this story.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And we have reached out to the RCMP for more information on this investigation. But as you mentioned, there was a news release this morning, and that's where we started to first hear about this investigation and these arrests. In that news release, the RCMP says among those charged now are active members of the Canadian Armed Forces, and that they're charged in what it says is ideologically motivated violent extremism. Now, this is an investigation, it says, began in January of 2024. As part of this news release, they also showed pictures that were taken as part of this investigation. We want to show you at least one of them right now, because among the allegations is that the accused were involved in activities to, quote, forcibly take land in the area of Quebec City. The RCMP also says 3 of the 4 accused allegedly planned to create an anti-government militia and allegedly took part in militia-style training. They're talking about exercises like shooting and ambush, survival-type training, as well as navigation.
Okay, hold on. I'm not defending what's going on. I think this is all hitting me in real time right now. But they're in the military, so how can you possibly say that they're engaging and that they're preparing in shooting practices and like that's in their training? Oh my God, you've got people out there doing survival tactics. They're after the government when their job is to survive. Literally. I'm not defending what's happening. Maybe it gets worse, but this is so weird. What is even the definitions of these things is my question, right? If you're in the military and you're training in the military, are you somehow, is it like a fine line between conspiracy against the government and doing your job for the government? Like, it's, again, I'm not defending what's going on. This is we're all being shown the same information in real time right now. Maybe we're going to get more information though. Maybe it is bad.
They also allege that they had scouting operations. Now, there's also a photo that investigators say was screenshotted from Instagram. This is an Instagram account that police say one of the accused allegedly created to try to recruit new members. Now, when we're talking about the accused right now, there are 3 now charged with the facilitation of terrorist activities. All of them are in their 20s, their mid-20s. We've got their names to show you there. They include Marc Aurel Chabot, 24 years old, of Quebec City, Simon Anger Odette, 24, of Newville, and Raphael Lagacé, 25, of Quebec City. Now, there is a 4th person who is charged here. That is Matthew Forbes, 33 years old, of Pont Rouge, and we've got his name there up there, as well as the charges he now faces. They are weapons-related charges as well as firearm-related charges as well. There are other photos that were also released as part of this investigation. Police talking about what was seized as part of this investigation that led to these charges: 16 explosive devices, 83 firearms, and
I mean, that's a lot, but are any of these legal?
accessories, about 11,000 rounds of ammunition, and 4 pairs of night vision goggles. Military equipment, Crystal, also seized. Again, a lot of questions about this investigation, what led to the charges, the timing of these charges, and the timing of this investigation. We are waiting for more information from the RCMP. As I mentioned, we did reach out to them this morning. What we do know, though, looking ahead for today, is that the 4 people are appearing in a Quebec City courthouse sometime later today.
All right, Marianne Domain.
I wish there was more information on this, because again, I'm not defending by any means. No defending what these people have said or done or what the alleged claims are. But this isn't the first time that we've seen this. And one of the last times we saw this, again, not defending any of the actions or words, but Diagolon and some of the members were accused of this same thing. And court cases went on for something similar, at least, maybe not the same thing, but something quite similar. And court cases went on for years, and eventually turns out there were no charges. Everything was dropped because it was just blown out of proportion by the police and by the government. And so I'm just wondering if that's a similar case with this. I don't know. I'm not, again, I can't state more clearly that I'm not defending any of the actions, words, or planning or whatever, nor do I know any of those people. But it feels like anything that you do, whether it's close to skirting the line of, whatever line, arbitrary line is drawn, it feels like leftist politicians and government and media almost always try to spin it as some sort of extremist mentality. Like, for crying out loud, I was called an extremist by the Premier of British Columbia, David Eby. For I've never done anything extreme in my life. Never. That's insane. All I did was call Doug Ford, the Premier of Ontario, a fat pig with rabies for wanting to cut off the power to 1.4, 1.5 million homes in America, which is in my opinion, and with AI's help, an act of war to cut off the power to another country. So I don't know. I got called an extremist for that. Again, not defending the matter, but I want to pass a question off to you based off the information we just saw. How do you feel about this? Do you think that this is getting spun crazy out of control, or do you think that this is actually worth investigating? I'd love to know your guys' thoughts down below. And next, we're going to take a look at what's going on with Alberta Primetime and what they have to say about this partnership with Ontario and how it's remarkable.
Good evening to you both, and let's begin with the premiers of Alberta and Ontario pressuring the feds to foster a better environment for private sector investment.
There'll be a moment where the rubber hits the road. Like, you can only talk the talk for so long before you start putting some real action around it.
Prime Minister Carney is no Justin Trudeau. He's a business mind. He's run massive multi-billion-dollar businesses, and he's bringing the business approach to the federal government that hasn't had that approach in the last 10 years.
Danielle Smith and Doug Ford have signed memorandums of understanding that we'll see more Ontario-built cars coming to Alberta, more Alberta alcohol being shipped to Ontario, and on the energy front, plans to study pipeline and railroads that could bring oil and gas to ports in Ontario for export. Donna, there are a few elements at play here, but what's your biggest takeaway from the premiers of Alberta and Ontario coming together here? What's the dominant element for you?
Buckle up. That would be my takeaway, watching that extravaganza with the belt buckle. I think this is amazing. We haven't seen this forever. When Lougheed was staring down Pierre Elliott Trudeau, Ontario, where I come from, was not helpful. Bill Davis was not helpful. We now have a premier in Ontario who is saying, we're a partner with you. We want the same things as you. Let's do it together. I think that is something remarkable, and I'm very excited about it. I think that's a big turning point. And when they sit down together with in the end of this month, figuring out what we're going to do with Trump, they've got a plan, and it's a saleable plan. And then they stare at EB in British Columbia saying, why aren't you at this table? Come to this table. I think it's brilliant.
John, these are memorandums of understanding, not necessarily changes or leading the way to changes in legislation.
I mean, nothing is held, right? And it's not a legal binding contract. It's all been commitments so far, which, don't get me wrong, is still absolutely phenomenal. But the real kind of final piece to that puzzle is going to be allowing a pipeline going directly from Alberta all the way to the left coast through British Columbia right to the ocean. That's kind of the final piece to Alberta oil being ultra successful, like above and beyond what it is right now and above and beyond what they're trying to get it to be. And we don't know if that's going to be successful because David Eby, even though he called me an extremist, which is very bizarre, he himself is the biggest extremist, radical, woke plague in the society. And he has said many times that a dirty pipeline will not be allowed to come through British Columbia. So we're just going to have to wait and see. And there's also a tremendous amount of climate activists in British Columbia that would probably likely try to block it by protesting or by, as we've seen, how climate activists take matters into their own hands through their vigilante wannabe acts, actually go and cause damage to said things, or in this case, a pipeline. So I don't really have a lot of optimism towards that pipeline actually making its way through British Columbia. I'm hopeful. I'm just not optimistic. But nonetheless, it's still very good that Alberta is making some moves. I like to see it. Chances are you like to see it. But instead of me speaking on your behalf, why don't you tell me down below in the comments if you are excited that Alberta is finally unleashing its energy superpower. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, it'd be super awesome for you guys to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in another video. Bye for now.